Good morning. Welcome back to another fine, cloudy, wonderful day here in eastern North Carolina. It has been raining a lot lately, and there's more rain in the forecast, I believe, for this evening, possibly this afternoon, and more rain forecast for tomorrow. I believe it's supposed to rain all day. Hold on. Pretty much all day Saturday. On and off. Sunday they're also predicting rain. 70% chance at this point, but that's not why you tuned into the channel. No. Today, I'm not really going to be doing anything out in the yard per se because it's still very wet. Everything is very wet. I can't mow the lawn because the ground is so wet. Working on the rose garden at this point, unless I really want to get muddy, it's not really going to happen today. Hopefully next week when things start drying out, because I think there's 4 or 5 days predicted of dry weather next week, I can get on with mowing the lawn because it's getting a tad overgrown. The vegetable garden is getting overgrown, needs a lot of TLC, and then of course start on the rose garden project. But for today, I'm going to do another project which I need to start doing in preparation for maybe next year or the year after, and that is growing a hedge. I'm not really growing a hedge, but I will be taking cuttings of some boxwoods and potting them up in preparation for planting them out, probably not next year, but the year after. So let's go over to the potting bench and then we'll talk about what I'm doing from there. So we're back here by the potting bench, obviously. And back in the early spring, I purchased a bunch of bare root. These are green velvet boxwoods from the Arbor Day Foundation, I believe. I'll leave a link below if I remember. And if I don't remember, please leave a comment saying, hey, there's no link below. Just remind me of these things. I think I've forgotten a few links in the past recently, and nobody's pointed that out, probably because you don't go and look at the links below. You should go look at the links below. Anywho, so I purchased them, and they're doing well. I'll probably wind up purchasing more in the fall and then maybe again in the spring or whatever. The bare roots I think are like $5 each. So for $5 to get basically what will become eventually a 4-foot tall plant is not a bad deal at all. It's actually very inexpensive. But I'm going to need a lot of hedging. I plan on doing hedging all around the vegetable garden. So that is a 40 by 80 80-foot long, 40-foot wide space. Currently in the front of the vegetable garden, you know I have the dahlias. Eventually I plan on moving them out into the flower garden once the flower garden starts to get established, and I would like to put hedging in the front of the vegetable garden. And again, around the flower garden eventually, I'd like there to be hedging all around. Again, to define the space is to add structure, something to look at during the winter time. The very few short months of winter that we do have here in eastern North Carolina, and also to act as windbreaks. As I discovered this spring, it can be very windy here. We had wind gusts on a clear, beautiful day of 40 to 50 miles per hour. Probably the highest, I think, gust on a clear day was 60 miles per hour. That's not common, but again, there's a lot of wind. So if you're putting out small plants, small plants, seedlings, that kind of thing, the winds can just beat them up. So eventually I'd like to put up a lot of hedging to help act as windbreaks. So when you do put out those plants, you know, it provides some shelter. So that's another reason. So there's multiple reasons why I'd like so much hedging. I was planning on doing a lot more hedging than I'm thinking about now, but now I'm thinking the time it takes, the age I'll be getting, once I have to start trimming all of this, it gets to be a bit much, so I'm scaling back on that. Nonetheless, I'm going to need a lot of hedging. So instead of purchasing all of the bare root plants that I'm going to need to create the bushes that I will need to create the hedges, what I'm going to do is take some cuttings today and I'll start potting them up in hopes that in a couple of years I can plant them out into the ground, and then I'll have some free hedging. I was going to do this on the ground by the driveway, but I just couldn't get the angle right, and anyways, let's just get on with this. So here I have a Sprinter boxwood, and I've been meaning to put this into the ground for a while. And Sprinter boxwood is known for its fast growth. In fact, when I bought it, it was probably about that tall, and it's put on all this new growth. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take some cuttings from the Sprinter boxwood, which was always the intention. This was an expensive plant. This was about $25 to $30. So let's round it up to $30. Bush was $30. That's a lot of money. And if I had to buy 500 of these, that's a lot of money. So instead, what I'm going to do is take cuttings from this to grow on as future plants. Now, according to the interwebs, you need about a 6-inch long piece, give or take. And I think they recommend the newer growth. So I'm just going to start snipping. And what I've got here is, well, there's some older woody growth on there, but I'm not going to discount this, and we'll see how that fares. And this one's probably a little too small, but again, you know, you start with, that's a good piece. It's recommended, I think, that you start with a certain piece to increase your chances. It doesn't mean that if you start with a smaller piece, you won't have the same or adequate results. It just, I think, will take longer, and it will also decrease the chances of success, but doesn't mean it won't succeed. At least that's my take on it. Again, I'm no expert. What I'm doing is I'm just snipping above the last set of leaves. So there was another set of leaves coming out at the end of this, and I just snipped right above that. So I believe it is recommended to use the newer growth, which is what I'm after right now. I'm not going after the older, woodier growth. All right, I think that's a good start. So I've made up some labels, and now I'm going to start planting. And from what I've read on the interwebs, because again, I'm no expert, but if you do a little homework on the interwebs, and if you watch some experts on TV, well, why am I saying quote experts? Anybody's more of an expert than I am. What is recommended is, so I'm going to take one plant first. Basically, you strip off like the bottom, let's say 4 inches of leaves. So I just stripped them off. I don't know if you could tell the focus there. So I have the bottom 4 inches of leaves essentially stripped off. Want to make sure that you cut right below a set of leaves. So this one I'm going to trim up a little bit. All right. Actually, I want a deeper pot for this one. And then you can put it in your planting medium. Now, I've heard all sorts of things, whether what you should and shouldn't do with your planting mediums. The first one I'm going to do here, this is all going to be a learning experiment, as it were, for me. The first one I'm going to do is in some store-bought soil. All right, and we're just going to stick that right in there, all the way down to the bottom. And I'm going to throw a label in it. Actually, I can put a little more soil in that. There we go. Basically, I'm planting it right up to the base of the leaves. Now that's done. I may give it a little bit of water, but the soil is already pretty saturated. Like I said, it's been raining here a lot, and even the bagged soil has gotten wet. So that one is done. Another thing I've heard, and what I'll probably wind up doing is one of the smaller ones here. I'll strip the leaves off of that. There we go. Make sure I cut to the bottom of a set of leaves. There we go. Now this one is going to be, this is odd for me. Essentially, we're not going to put it into a potting mix. What we're going to be doing is, hold on one second. Okay, so for the next one, I'm going to do, like I said, something unusual for me. And so what I'm going to do is first put a piece of paper towel at the bottom of this pot. And the reason I'm doing that is because there's holes at the bottom of the pot, which are fairly sizable, or sizable enough to let the perlite that I'm putting in come out. Actually, I'll do this by hand because this is hard to pour out of a broken up bag here. So essentially what I'm doing, and I've seen this done recently before, I think it was Gardener's World, and you take your cutting and you place it into a pot of perlite. And what you're going to do is you're going to keep it there for the next, I think, about 2 weeks, roughly, give or take, until it starts to root, and then you'll move it on to a potting medium, as it were. So theoretically, it's harder for this plant that I just put into the garden soil to have baby roots push out into the soil versus this, which is easier to push out into the perlite. Now, there's no nutrients in the perlite, so obviously it's going to struggle for that, but the theory is it'll grow those roots faster, and once those roots are then bigger, searching out for nutrients, you then take it from the perlite and you can then put it into your potting soil, garden soil. And this guy I will give a good drench to. Oop. While I'm at it, I'll just give this guy a good little soak. Now this guy in the perlite, what I'm going to do is I'm going to move him into the seed starting station in the garage. The reason we want to do that is because I don't want him to dry out too quickly, and if he's in the garage in a more sheltered place and a more controlled environment than out here in the weather, I can better keep an eye on him, and hopefully, theoretically, possibly, he won't dry out as badly. We'll see. All right, and for the next couple that I'm going to do, I'm going to mix in the perlite with the garden soil, the store-bought soil that I have. Careful, don't breathe any of this perlite dust in. It's not good for your lungs. Essentially what I'm doing here, you could also do the same thing with potting soil, because potting soil has a lot of perlite in it already. But you're basically making a lighter, fluffier mix, as it were. All right. Okay, so there's some, put a little bit more in. Okay, take my next one, strip off bunch of bottom leaves, stick it in, and Bob's your uncle. Okay, so that's about it for today. I just wanted to kind of show you the process that I'm going to do to start growing my hedging. And if you have any questions or comments, please leave them below if you're more of an expert than I am, because I'm not an expert. So if you know anything about taking cuttings from boxwoods and would like to offer any suggestions or advice, please leave that below. I'm always open. I'm learning. I'm trying to grow my green finger. That'll be wrapping it up. I'll wrap it up for today. I still have a plethora more to do. I'm not going to bore you with any of that. I think I'd like to take some cuttings from my baby gem boxwoods, because they seem to be fairly vigorous growers. So I think I'll take some cuttings from them so I can continue along the one side of the vegetable garden with the same variety, baby gem. Again, if you have any questions, comments, feel free to leave them below. If you haven't subscribed, please subscribe. Click on the bell icon to be notified when I do put up a new video, because you never know what new antics I'm going to get up to next. Hopefully the sun comes out by next week and I can start moving on to newer, better, bigger, and more exciting projects. That rose garden really is calling to me. And I think the grass underneath the weed fabric is pretty much dead at this point, which means I can start taking that up, putting in the edging for the beds, and then I can start building out my bed, which then means I can start planting out roses in the next few weeks, which is all very exciting. Allegedly, the weatherman says we're supposed to have a cooler August than normal. We'll see. If you don't follow me on Instagram, give a follow on Instagram. I'll put that up around here someplace, maybe in multiple locations. Wouldn't that be funny? Ha ha. I often post pictures there on Instagram that you won't see here on YouTube. I try to keep the content a little different. Again, if you have any questions, comments, etc., please leave them below. That'll be it for today. I'll catch you on the next one. Bye-bye.